Hello, everyone. Wow, so many people here. Did any of you go on the Peace Park walk today? Yeah? Was it nice? Yeah? Awesome. I love walking in the Peace Park. I like going for walks in the woods in general. Yes? Who's that? Oh, good. Recently, my husband and I were walking in the woods in Gaithersburg. We took a hike on one of the trails there, and they're walking along this narrow trail that followed the stream's bank. And as we're walking, my husband was about 10 feet in front of me on the trail, and he felt like the ground start to shift beneath him. And I just saw him, he just turned and then dropped straight down about 10 feet. And luckily he landed on his feet. He's okay. But it was like one of those Wile E. Coyote moments when like Wile E. Coyote goes out over the cliff and then suddenly realizes there's no ground beneath him and then just falls. And it was just like that. It was the craziest thing to watch. It was like one of those moments that just it took so long for it to happen, and it was over in a split second. And I'm like, no, and like there's nothing I can do. So Chagdud Tulku says that each one of us is like that. We're like a person standing on the edge of a crumbling cliff. And he says that if we are too hot, too tired, too sick, too busy to practice, that is like saying we can't make the effort to move away as the ground crumbles beneath our feet. It means we don't understand the four thoughts. Once we fully comprehend them, we'll realize the necessity of jumping clear. And what's more, when we see someone else close to the edge and about to fall, we'll rush to help. We won't claim that we're too tired or too busy. So my poor husband gets to be the subject of all of my talks, so one of you have to go hiking with me sometime so I can talk about someone else. The four thoughts that turn the mind to Dharma are called the common foundation because they're common to all of the Buddhist traditions. And contemplating them is a traditional method for preparing oneself to practice the Dharma. Dharma means truth, so these could also be called the four minds that turn the mind toward truth. You don't have to be a Buddhist to benefit from these contemplations. The Buddha taught the truth, but he didn't copyright it. So these truths apply to all of existence, whether you believe in Buddhism or not, and anyone can observe them, just like the law of gravity. The first thought to contemplate is one's precious human rebirth. This precious human rebirth provides freedom and leisure to engage in spiritual practice. And this freedom and leisure cannot be found in other realms of experience, like the animal realm or the hell realms. It only can be found in the human realm. But a human birth is not precious in and of itself. What distinguishes a precious human birth from a regular human birth is the freedom and opportunity to engage in spiritual practice. There are so many human beings who lack the opportunity to use this life for its ultimate potential, and many who can't use this life for anything other than their immediate survival needs. We are incredibly fortunate that we have the freedom and opportunity to engage in spiritual practice, change our bad behavior, and adopt beneficial habits that will benefit ourselves and others well beyond this life. It's like winning the cosmic lottery, and yet we take it for granted all the time. So I thought we could run through our gratitude list, all the things that we can be grateful for. So the first thing we can be grateful for is that we're not imprisoned by anger in the hell realms. The beings in the hell realm suffer from intense heat and cold and pain beyond anything we can imagine. This is the result of harmful actions they have committed with a motivation of hatred. Their misery is all-consuming, so they can't think of anything else for even a moment. Because of that, they don't have the freedom to engage in spiritual practice. Now, sometimes it can be some people have trouble believing in the hell realms. Like, are they really exist? Is that a metaphor? The hell realms and all of the 6 realms do literally exist, but they're also present and observable in our world. So Gyaltrul Rinpoche says, if you have a hard time believing in the hell realm as a place, perhaps you can believe in its existence in this realm. Think about the countries in this world, and even the places in your own country, where people die every summer from heat or every winter from cold. For them, this is definitely the experience of the hot and cold hells. Next on our gratitude list is that we are not imprisoned by desire in the realm of the hungry ghosts. These beings are tormented by hunger and thirst as a result of harmful actions committed with the motivation of desire. And centuries can pass without them even hearing the word water. In this prison of hunger and thirst, they can't contemplate anything else. They can't possibly think of anything else for a moment, and so they don't have the freedom to engage in spiritual practice. We can see this realm here too. People may die from famine, or they're not able to even have the clothes they need to cover their bodies to protect themselves from the elements. This is the result of intense desire. And if we look at our own minds, we can see that we also have minds filled with desire, wanting this or that, needing this or that, never being satisfied. Gyaltrul Rinpoche says, when you can't be satisfied already having what you need, and when the more you get, the more you want, then you are already hungry spirits even before death. We can also be grateful that we are not imprisoned by ignorance in the animal realm. If you were an animal, every waking thought you had would be about survival. Animals are always hunting or being hunted, and domesticated animals like cows suffer from slavery. So you may have a dog or cat that seems to have a cushy life with lots of toys and love, but they're not capable of higher thought. They can't pray. And even intelligent animals like parrots or elephants, they're not able to think in the same way that humans can. And as a result of harmful actions motivated by ignorance, they have found themselves in this life form where they're consumed by the daily tasks of simply surviving. They don't have the wisdom to discern what's right from what's wrong. Therefore, they don't have the freedom to engage in spiritual practice. This realm is also inside of us. We all want to be happy, but we don't know how to accumulate the causes of happiness. And so we unwittingly sow seeds of suffering in our attempts to be happy because we don't really have a clue what's going on. And we misunderstand the nature of reality, and we forget the law of cause and effect. So when we wander around in a state of delusion, committing actions that oppose our wish for happiness, we're acting just like ignorant animals. We are also not imprisoned by our next gratitude things. We're not imprisoned by bliss in the realm of the long-lived gods. It sounds kind of weird to be imprisoned by bliss, but I had an experience recently that I feel like kind of illustrates this point. The other day I had just a great day. I came home, I was just excited. I was like on cloud 9. I was just like totally just beaming and just so happy. And like, I felt high on joy. Have you ever felt that way? You feel kind of high on joy. And I sat down to practice, and I discovered that this selfish joy was like a cement wall around my heart. And all I wanted to do was just replay all the good parts of my day and kind of like keep getting that hit of joy, just keep getting that. And then as I did that, it just reinforced this wall around me, around my heart. And I didn't want to leave my joy in order to think of the suffering of others or consider anyone else. And anytime that we have a separation like that between us and others, we're actually suffering. Even if we feel blissful in that moment, we're actually suffering. It's actually a source of our pain, is to have that dualism. So fortifying this wall of self-cherishing instead of opening my heart to the suffering of others that seems very similar to me to what the experience of the gods is like. They are so blissed out in their own sensual pleasures, and so they don't think to use their life for anything beyond that, anything beyond their own enjoyment. They're so attached to their own bliss. The cause of being born as a long-lived God is committing positive actions tainted by attachment, instead of with bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is the union of wisdom and compassion. And without it, our actions remain ordinary, and they reap an ordinary result. The gods enjoy this extremely long life of immense pleasure and power, everything they could possibly wish for. And it sounds pretty great, but it's not. They are consumed by their own pleasure, and they just don't have the freedom to engage in spiritual practice. So at the end of their lives, this all falls apart. Their bodies start to decay and smell. All their friends abandon them. And they can see clearly that their next rebirth will be in the lower realms because they've used up all of their positive karma. And then they feel intense regret for having wasted their life on sensual pursuits instead of spiritual pursuits. And we can see this realm also. This realm is also inside of us, and it can be seen in the experience of old age. We're not imprisoned in a land of barbarians. That's another thing we can be grateful for. That means to be born in a place where the Buddha's teachings are not known. It also refers to being born in a community where beings consider harming others an act of faith, or believing that taking life is good. So if you're born as a human being, but you live in a place where there's no Dharma, and there's no seekers of the spiritual path, and there's no one to even teach you basic love and compassion, then how can you possibly have the freedom to practice the Dharma? The next thing to be grateful for is freedom from the prison of wrong views. And hopefully we have freedom from this. You'll have to check for yourself. But wrong views are beliefs that are contrary to the Buddhist teachings, including the belief that actions have no karmic effect, or the beliefs of eternalism and nihilism. So these kinds of beliefs spoil our mind, and they prevent us from aspiring to the authentic Dharma, to the extent that we no longer have the opportunity to practice it. We are not imprisoned in a time when there is no Buddha. So even though the Buddha is not alive today, he's come and taught, and so we have the teachings. If we were born in a time when no one had even heard of the Buddha or Dharma or Sangha, we would have no way to learn how to distinguish good from bad, and we would not have the freedom to practice the Dharma. And lastly, we are not imprisoned by mental deficiencies. So this means that our minds work well enough to listen to the teachings, to reflect on them, and to put them into practice. If one cannot comprehend the teachings, one does not have the freedom to practice them. So basically, to be born a human is to have the door of your prison cell open for one brief moment. And to have a precious human birth is to have, for a brief moment, the briefest of moments, the cell door open and to have found a map and a guide to get out of the prison. It's up to you to put them into practice. It's up to you to use the map, to ask the guide for directions. You have to actually use this opportunity, because very soon that cell door swings shut again, and it does not open often. Another distinguishing aspect of a precious human birth is the presence of the 10 advantages. There are 5 personal advantages and 5 circumstantial advantages. So the 5 personal advantages are having been born as a human being in a place where there is Dharma, with all of your sense faculties such as hearing and sight intact, without reversed karma, which means that one has the karma to practice the Dharma, but it isn't strong enough, so it reverses, which would be a situation like, for instance, a monk who loses their vows to go run off with a woman. You had the opportunity to connect with the Dharma, but it wasn't strong enough to keep you there. So if we don't have that type of karma, then that's a positive. And finally, possessing faith in the Dharma. So these are all essential. If you don't have these personal endowments, then it won't do you any good to have the circumstantial endowments, which are that the Buddha has come to the world, he's given the teachings still survive, one has taken up the Dharma, and through the compassion of a spiritual friend, one is receiving the teachings. So we can each look at our lives and see if we possess these advantages and these freedoms. And if we see that we have them, we can rejoice, and we can see if there is anything we can do to improve them and to strengthen them. And if we see that we're missing a few things, we can strive to obtain them. It's important to reflect on these freedoms, on the freedoms that we have and the freedoms that we lack, and work with them. Try to figure out how can we free ourselves as best as possible in this life. How can we take advantage of this opportunity? Chagdud Tulku says, "We cannot assume that having been human once will be guaranteed a human existence again and again. A human body is very difficult to obtain. It requires the accumulation of a vast amount of merit through scrupulously pure discipline in past lifetimes. Discipline of this kind involves three things: not performing negative acts or harmful behavior, cultivating virtuous thoughts and actions, and having as one's motivation for observing the first two disciplines an altruistic desire to benefit others. It is only because we have amassed this amount of merit, coupled with the aspiration to be reborn as a human being, that we are here now in the human realm." So even if, in a general sense, our life grants us all of these freedoms and advantages, our ability to engage in spiritual practice fluctuates on a daily, hourly, momentary basis. There are many circumstances and conditions that preclude spiritual practice, such as emotional turmoil, stupidity, being dominated by a false spiritual friend who perverts your understanding of truth, laziness, experiencing the effects of past negative actions and becoming discouraged, being enslaved or controlled by others, seeking the Dharma only out of fear for this present life, like being afraid that you'll go hungry, so showing up at the temple only for a free lunch. Not the main reason to show up here. Hypocritical practice, like trying to look like a spiritual practitioner to win fame or fortune. Being bound to your worldly commitments, your wealth, pleasure, children, relatives, and so on. Having morals so corrupted that one lacks even one iota of humanity or kindness. That would also preclude spiritual practice. Lacking dissatisfaction with cyclic existence, which could also be called being suckered by samsara. Having a complete absence of faith, taking pleasure in harmful actions, lacking interest in the Dharma, or disregarding one's vows and spiritual commitments. So any of these conditions prevents us from authentically engaging in spiritual practice. And if we contemplate the prevalence of these limiting conditions in our lives and in the lives of people that we know, it becomes obvious what a rare and precious opportunity that we have. In a sense, every time that one honors a Buddha or Bodhisattva, one is also honoring the precious human rebirth. The Buddhas didn't waste their precious human rebirth. They used it to become Buddhas. And that's the only difference between us and the Buddhas. We have the exact same potential, but we're wasting it. Gyaltrul Rinpoche says, "This body is more than a diamond body with a price of $100 million, so we don't need to waste that. You have this treasure, so don't be stingy. Don't be stingy toward yourself, but use your more than diamonds body to benefit yourself. Don't be stingy toward others, but use it to benefit them too. Recognize your property, what you have. In one way, your property is like public property for others. You have a precious body, and not only that, you have interest in the Dharma, you can study and practice. So pray for sentient beings." So the next thought that turns the mind toward truth is the contemplation of impermanence. The Buddha taught that all compounded things are impermanent and have no true inherent existence. Because our bodies are composed of compounded elements, they will they're impermanent, and they will eventually come apart, and we will die. We like to pretend that this won't happen, though, and we ignore how quickly our lives are passing us by, pretending that we'll live forever. And then all of a sudden, it's halfway through October of 2019, and you're like, wow, where did all that time go? Like, it's already October? And when we're suddenly confronted with the truth of impermanence, with a reminder of our own mortality or a reminder of others' mortality, our world is shattered, and we suffer greatly. It's like this big surprise all of a sudden, like we didn't know all this time that everyone dies. Even the impermanence of inanimate objects brings us suffering, like when your car breaks down or your jewelry is stolen. It's not the impermanence itself that causes us to suffer, but the fact that we don't expect things to be impermanent. We form intense attachments to a world that is as illusory as a rainbow. Believing that our lives and realities are permanent and lasting is like being a child that believes that the sandcastle they've built is a real castle with real queens and kings inside. Believing the sandcastle to be real and permanent, they become very attached to it, and they cry when it gets washed away. But the adults know that sandcastles are by nature impermanent, and so they don't form attachments to it in the first place, and they're not upset when the waves wash it away. Contemplating impermanence cuts through our denial and our worldly distractions. It helps us to recognize the preciousness of each and every moment so that we can use our time wisely and not waste it. Then we can actualize the most profound potential of this human life, which is to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. To contemplate impermanence, it's important to think about the impermanence of many different things. It's good to contemplate one's own mortality, as well as the impermanence of all sentient beings' lives. We can think about the lives of our friends and our family, our coworkers, great spiritual leaders, powerful rulers and presidents, celebrities. Are any of them free from death? No. Is there any wealth in the world that would save you from death? No. Does fame save you from death? No. Everyone is impermanent. We can also contemplate the impermanence of power and status, the impermanence of relationships, the impermanence of our own likes and dislikes, the impermanence of the seasons, the impermanence of the earth and all other planets, the impermanence of the universe, and even the impermanence of time itself. It's important to go into great detail and depth with these contemplations, to not just gloss over it, just like, okay, well, I guess someday the earth won't be here anymore, and neither will I. Done. You have to go deeper than that, and on a very regular basis. So, for instance, you could contemplate the life cycle of a single flower, which was once a seed, and then a shoot, and then a flower attracting bees, and then a withered, decaying thing, and then fertilizer for other flowers. And now what about the field that the flower is in? How many generations of people have tilled that field? And what happened to them? Where are they now? Where are their families now? What happened to their petty daily concerns? We don't even know their names. We don't even know the names of the people who have lived on the land before us. What about the climate that the field is in? Maybe this field is in a temperate climate right now, but during the ice ages it didn't feel like that. And if climate change keeps going the way it's going, maybe it'll be a very hot place. With those changes, all of the ecosystem changes too. It may have had, that species of flower hasn't even existed forever. The field may not have always been a field. It may have once been a mountain that has eroded over thousands of years. And you can just kind of keep going, keep poking at it. Keep poking at any little place where a belief in lasting permanence might be hiding. Contemplating impermanence in one's own death sounds like a real bummer, but it actually produces happiness. When we internalize the awareness of impermanence, our clinging and self-cherishing will decrease. Right now we cling to our objects, our possessions, our bodies, our idea of self. But as we contemplate impermanence, all of these habitual tendencies will decrease. Gyaltrul Rinpoche says, because all these things are impermanent, and when you understand the truth of impermanence, naturally the way you relate to everything will change. Thinking, I want this, I really need to have this or that thing, I want this diamond ring, I want that piece of jewelry, I've got to have this or I won't be happy, I can't be satisfied until I have it. The mind force behind that attachment and compulsion, that attraction to objects, will be cut off from the base if you hold the truth of impermanence in your mind stream. So knowing that each moment could be our last puts things in perspective. If you can see clearly that death is right around the corner, you don't worry so much about the petty annoyances of daily life. If you consider that if you really know that your family, friends, and coworkers could die at any moment, you would appreciate the time that you had with them. You'd see that there's no reason to fight with them. You could be separated in any second. If we really truly get this, and we see that our lives pass by us like a lightning flash in space, then we'll do our very best to show up in each and every moment with love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. We'll recognize the preciousness of that opportunity, and we'll use it. We'll drop our attachment to worldly nonsense, and we'll use every second to benefit others. And then when our sandcastles get washed away, we'll be like adults and have humor about the whole thing. The next thought that turns the mind toward truth is the law of karma, or cause and effect. Khenpo Tenzin Norgay says, karma is the law of nature, the law of cause and effect. It is the unavoidable reality of the universe. Karma is just a way of expressing how our mind functions. If our mind has the tendency to harm other sentient beings, for example, that's a negative state of mind. With that negative state of mind, you do actions either through body, speech, or mind to harm someone, and those actions result in negative karma. Similarly, if your mind has a tendency to help other sentient beings, and with that positive state of mind, you do actions with your body, speech, or mind to benefit others, then those actions will result in positive karma. Karma not only determines our future rebirth as a god or a human or an animal or whatever, but also what the fabric and detail of our lives will be like. Positive karma results in pleasant experiences, and negative karma results in negative experiences. If you awaken the bodhicitta, which is the union of wisdom and compassion, and act from the bodhicitta, then no matter how your actions appear to others, they'll bring benefit. Actions driven by bodhicitta result in merit, which is the virtue and positive energy needed to gain a precious human rebirth and to attain liberation. Sometimes we may think that because no one saw us do something bad, we got away with it. But we never get away with anything. Karma is infallible. What makes us think that we've gotten away with it is that we don't experience the results of our actions immediately. Life would be so much simpler and much shorter if we did. So imagine if you stepped on a bug and immediately this giant shoe came out of the sky and squashed you. That'd be, well, there's no questioning that karma, you know? It's very simple. Because we don't experience the effects of our karma instantly, we perceive life's events to be happening at random, and we feel victimized by what happens to us, not realizing that we created these circumstances a long time ago. It's kind of like when apples falling from the tree, and it has the experience of it falling from the tree. If that were to last for 100 years, it would think all of a sudden it's very surprised when it hits the ground. But if you step back and you see that and you're like, yep, nope, that's what's going to happen, you wouldn't be surprised at all. You can imagine a seagull perched on a rock, casting a shadow on the rock. When the seagull flies away, he thinks he has no shadow. But then when he lands again, there's the shadow. In the same way, the effects of our actions follow us like our own shadows. whether we realize it or not. Chagdud Tulku says, "A single seed will produce a whole tree with many branches, flowers, and fruit, and each fruit will contain even more seeds. The smallest seed of anger will produce great suffering for ourselves and others. By the same token, even a small act of generosity or compassion will produce great happiness. We usually don't know what will come from the seeds we sow. They lie dormant in the mind for a long time, and when they finally begin to sprout, we have forgotten having planted them at all. Eventually, though, they will bear fruit." So we don't have time in this class to go into the intricacies of how karma works, but it accounts for a number of factors, such as one's intention and whether the action was fully completed or not. So for instance, successfully squashing a bug would have a more severe effect than intending to squish a bug but not succeeding, or accidentally stepping on the bug and feeling remorse. Often we create mixed karma, which happens when we have a mix of motivations or when our actions have a mixed result. They cause some benefit and some harm. It's a mix. For instance, if you, say, volunteer at the animal shelter because you want to help dogs find their forever homes, and you really love dogs and you want to help them, and you also kind of want to meet some cute guys, so maybe you'll sign up to volunteer there. And so you've got a mixed motivation. You've got some compassion and some self-interest. So that's going to have a mixed result. If you get into the science of it, karma is actually complex enough to explain all of the quirks of our existence, all of the weird situations that we find ourselves in. Karma can explain those. But the gist of it is pretty simple. Killing shortens our own lifespan. Saving lives extends our life. Harming the bodies of others causes physical issues with our own bodies. Caring for others creates the causes to be cared for ourselves. Stealing causes poverty. Generosity creates the causes for wealth. If you lie, you will be lied to. People won't trust you. They won't believe you, even if you tell the truth. But if you're honest, straightforward, and kind, then others will also be that way to you. It's not rocket science, honestly. It's pretty simple. It's pretty common sense. If you sow barley, you'll reap barley. If you sow flowers, you'll reap flowers. If you sow discord, you'll reap discord. Very simple. If we look at our current life, we can make an educated guess about the seeds that we've sown in the past. So for instance, if you've never faced food insecurity, if you always have food on the table, then you must have provided food for others. If you suffer from physical ailments, you likely have caused bodily harm to others at some point, some past life. If you're poor, you were probably stingy in the past, or maybe you stole something. And if you were wealthy, then you must have been generous. All of the circumstances of our lives are the consequences of our past actions. Sometimes people take this as victim blaming, but it's not like that. You may have been a mouse when you were stealing. And you may have been a goose when you were generous. You don't know what what lifetime this was that you were doing. It's not really victim blaming if you're saying thousands and thousands of years ago you were a termite and you stole the termite next to you's food. That's not, how can you blame someone for that, really? People like to use it sometimes as a blame mechanism, though. Well, that's your karma, you did this to yourself. But it's not intended to be used that way. It's actually used to help us understand the construction of our self-created prison so that we can start to dismantle it. We can understand what actions keep us in the prison and what actions help us get out of the prison. So if you want to know what your future will be like, look at your actions now. Ask yourself, what seeds are you sowing? And will you like the result? The next thought that turns the mind towards truth is the suffering of cyclic existence, which sounds like a lot of fun. The Buddha didn't teach about suffering just to bum us out. He spoke about suffering in the way that a doctor would educate a patient about their injury or disease. For lifetime after lifetime, we have tried to find fulfillment and happiness by reinforcing our idea of self. But focusing on ourselves only increases our attachment and aversion. And this ultimately increases our suffering. As Chagdud Tulku says, if self-centeredness produced happiness, we would all be enlightened by now. We want to believe that we're happy, or at least that we will be, as long as we can maintain our health, our wealth, our social position, our fame or reputation, then we can pretend that we're doing okay. But that's some high-maintenance happiness, isn't it? If even one little thing slips, if we get sick, if we lose our job, if we get in a fight with someone that we love, suddenly our temporary comfort looks very tenuous. We start to realize that this existence is actually quite painful and everything's not as okay as we thought it was. If there were no cure for suffering, there would be no point in discussing it. But the Buddha taught that there is a cure. So when we understand our current condition, we will understand the urgency of taking the appropriate medicine. This is why we contemplate the suffering of samsara, which means the wheel or cycle of existence. The cycle of existence is composed of 6 realms: gods, demigods, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell realms. You can actually see there's a tanka in the entry hall if anyone wants to take a look after the class. The tanka in the entry hall depicts these 6 realms. So the cycle of existence is like a closed jar in which all sentient beings are trapped like flies. And whether we're born in the higher or lower realms, we're still stuck in this jar. And it's called the cycle of existence because we circle around and around the jar, taking rebirth in one after another of the 6 realms, as a result of our own actions, which, whether positive or negative, are tainted by attachment. And that's why we stay stuck in the jar. In the human realm, we don't have as much suffering as in the other realms, so we have more opportunities to practice. But we still have a good deal of suffering. We have the suffering of change, when a state of happiness suddenly changes into suffering. Whatever comfort or happiness there is to be found in samsara, none of it is the least bit reliable or consistent. You can think even of suffering of change. Like imagine if you wanted to go to you're very excited for your friend's wedding. And you're really looking forward to going to a friend's wedding. And it's like, oh man, I'm going to wear this great dress. I'm so happy for this couple. That's going to be so joyous. And then let's say someone very close to you dies the week before the wedding. Now you're not happy about going to that wedding. Now it's a real strain. Now that's really difficult and causes a lot of stress for you because you don't feel like you can be present. You know what I mean? Suddenly it's like that's dependent. Your happiness of going to the wedding is dependent on all these other conditions. And those conditions change. We want solid ground to stand on, but everything erodes. We rely on our family and friends, but eventually we will lose them or leave them at the time of our death, if not before. We rely on our communities. We rely on our houses, our homes. We rely on our jobs. We will lose all of these, or we'll leave them eventually. We rely on our own self-identity, but that's not consistent or reliable either. There are so many things that we rely on, but the only thing that we can really rely on samsara for is suffering. Other ways that we suffer is suffering atop suffering, which is a suffering when one bad thing happens after another. There's pervasive suffering, which refers to the fact that we are totally immersed in the causes of suffering. Everything in our existence, our food, our clothing, our homes, our furniture, are produced with the causes of suffering. They're produced with harmful actions, such as the exploitation of the environment or the exploitation of animals, or there's deceit and theft involved in the business practices that get the products to us. There are all of these bad causes, negative actions that happen along the way. And so everything that we do is produced by harmful actions. So how can it result in anything but suffering? We suffer from birth, old age, sickness, and death. We suffer from fear of our enemies, from losing our loved ones, from getting what we don't want and not getting what we do want. There are so many sufferings in the human realms, and this is the least of it. Every other realm in existence has so much more suffering than we do. If we understood what the suffering of the lower realms was like, we would never complain about anything that we encountered in our lives. So it's important to contemplate the suffering of each of these realms in depth so that we can really understand the depth of our predicament. For instance, if you were in a burning house and you thought that one room in the house was safe, you would go and hide in that room of the house. But if you understood that the whole house is on fire, what would you do? You would leave the house. You would actually make your way to safety. So we have all of these misconceptions about the world. We think there's this safe little room we can hide in this burning house. And there's no safe rooms. We have to get out of the house. So contemplating suffering, understanding the suffering and limitations of cyclic existence, motivates us to find a way out of the jar of samsara. The same way that understanding that the house is on fire motivates you to get out, or understanding that you are ill motivates you to take medicine. If we really understood these four thoughts, we would realize that we are standing on the edge of a crumbling cliff. It's a truly urgent situation, and we must jump out of the way as soon as possible. And to arrive at this understanding, we have to reflect on the four thoughts and examine them critically. We must ask ourselves, is it true that I have absolutely no alternative to the practice of Dharma in order to break out of the unending cycles of existence? Is that true? Chagdud Tulku says, through repeated contemplation, or what is sometimes called analytical meditation, we can change our deeply ingrained thought patterns. If we didn't contemplate the same old mental poisons, ignorance, attachment, aversion, jealousy, and pride would come up day after day, year after year. Simply trying to quiet the mind isn't enough to overcome them. That kind of meditation practice is like pushing the pause button on a tape recorder, so we don't have to listen to music we don't like. For as long as we hold the button, we don't hear anything, but as soon as we release it, the music we so dislike starts playing again. In contemplation, we do more than interrupt the tape. We erase it and make a new one. We transform our ordinary habits of mind as well as negative thoughts and actions. Then we hear a different sound, one far more harmonious and beneficial. So it's said that the ordinary mind is like a legless man riding the blind wild horse of the subtle energies of the body, or the winds. So this combination of mind and winds is what can make meditation so difficult, especially because of the way that we judge the movement of our minds. So you might sit down to meditate, expecting your mind to follow suit, to sit down and shut up. But it doesn't, does it? It jumps all over the place, and you feel like a failure. You might think, why can't my mind just sit still? But this shows a misunderstanding of the mind. The mind has no choice but to move. Its phenomenal or surface nature is dynamic. Like the wind, it has to move. So when one first starts to meditate, one's concentration is like water in a stream coursing rapidly down a mountain. And over time, it becomes like a wide river, slower, steadier, but still moving. Eventually, one's concentration will be like the ocean or a lake. So if you look at a lake, you might not immediately see movement in it, but if you look closely enough, you'll see that there's still some movement on the surface. The wind blows against the surface, but the depths are very calm and peaceful. So eventually our minds will be like that. The goal is not to stop all movement entirely and make a stagnant swamp of the mind. That's often what we try to do. That's not it. The mind will always move, and so we must address both aspects of the mind, its knowing quality and its quality of movement. Taming the mind is much like taming a wild horse. So if you have a wild horse and you tie it to a short tether, it will freak out and it will buck all over the place trying to get away. It could even hurt itself trying to get free. Instead, though, if you put the wild horse in a very large corral, it's not really free, but it doesn't feel confined because it has freedom of movement. So as we spend more time with the horse, it gets to know us, and it realizes that we're not going to harm it, and so it slowly loses some of its fear, and we can move a little closer to it. And as it begins to calm down, we can slowly make the corral smaller. Similarly, when we want to tame our minds, we shouldn't try to restrain it at first, because it will react and jump around like a wild horse. Instead, we make a large corral of virtuous thoughts. The mind isn't really free, but it isn't totally confined. You still have freedom of movement within this corral. And then we can slowly work with the mind's qualities of movements and make the corral smaller. In addition to analytical meditation, we practice a more non-conceptual kind of meditation in which we simply let the mind relax and fall into its natural state without any contemplation. So this type of meditation cuts the mind's attachment to concepts. Its habit of always thinking of the past or future, thinking of likes and dislikes. All of that thinking is like constantly stirring the water in a muddy pond, never letting it settle and clarify. But by allowing the mind to relax into its natural state, we work with the mind's self-seeing or self-knowing quality. Together, these two meditation techniques, the analytical meditation and the non-conceptual meditation, are like the handle and blade of a sword, which we can use to cut attachment not only to the ordinary thought process, but also to non-conceptual, blissful, or extraordinary experience. Chagdud Tulku says, "In so doing, we cut the roots of the grosser reflection of the mind's poisons, samsara, as well as the subtler reflection of the mind's positive qualities, nirvana. When we alternate these two methods, slowly and subtly our perspective begins to change. What starts as intellectual understanding gradually becomes more personal and experiential. We approach the true nature of mind beyond the extremes of is and isn't, thought and no thought." So to attain enlightenment, we need both of these practices. Just like a bird needs two wings to fly, we need the two wings of method and wisdom, contemplation and relaxation. It's also like exercise. When you exercise, you have to both work out and you have to stretch. And if you do one without the other, you're not actually going to be fit, you know? Intellectualism can be tempting. We may believe that we can attain enlightenment just by thinking. And if we think enough, if we think intelligently enough and diligently enough, and if we're just super clever, you know, we'll eventually have a eureka moment. And we'll figure it all out. But we've been thinking nonstop since time out of mind, and it hasn't made us any happier. Chagdud Tulku says, "If thinking alone produced enlightenment, we would already be Buddhas. Yet having a blank mind doesn't produce enlightenment either. Attachment to meditative stability can lead to a blissful existence for aeons in a formless realm in which there is no thought and no physical body. But once the karma sustaining that existence is exhausted, the mind stream falls into a lower realm to suffer once again. Bears and prairie dogs hibernate for months at a time, yet their state of blank mind doesn't produce enlightenment." So don't be a prairie dog. So we must both contemplate and rest. And contemplation is fairly self-explanatory, but resting the mind probably needs some explanation. Allowing the mind to rest is an effortless process that Chagdud Tulku says reveals an indwelling awareness, an awareness that is non-dual, not a subjective awareness of an object. usually when people meditate, they try to do something. But instead of trying to do something, we just let the mind relax. You don't block it, you don't follow it, just let it be. We're allowing our mind to rest in a spontaneously open space in which thoughts arise and subside. All sorts of thoughts about the past or future will naturally occur because this is the space in which they occur, but you don't grasp at them, follow them, you don't suppress them or push them away, you just let them be. Ordinary thoughts stem from ignorance, attachment, or aversion. And Chagdud Tulku says, their recurrence in the mind stream forms the basis for the continuity of samsara. So instead of being upset when they come up, respond to them with compassion, realizing that this is how you and all other beings become entrapped in suffering. Thinking, there's a thought, I have to get rid of it, is like the pot calling the kettle black for both our thoughts. The goal is neither to think nor not to think. The goal is to reveal the essence of mind. So in the beginning, the mind won't stay relaxed for very long because our habit of conceptualization is too strong. Instead of getting caught up in our ordinary thoughts, we can contemplate the persistence of the thought process itself. And we can use that to turn our minds back to the Dharma. So it's like Milarepa once said, when you run after your thoughts, you're like a dog chasing a stick. Every time a stick is thrown, you run after it. But instead, be like a lion who, rather than chasing after the stick, turns to face the thrower. One only throws a stick at a lion once. So we can redirect our ordinary thinking in the following step-by-step process. I'll give some instruction on how to do this type of contemplation, and then we're going to try it together. So you begin by contemplating one of the 4 foundational thoughts. And you can contemplate for a few minutes. If you can stay focused, you can contemplate for an hour, however long. But when your mind feels full of concepts, stagnant, it no longer feels fresh, then you drop the contemplation and you relax the mind. And you allow your mind to relax only as long as it remains truly restful. Once you notice you've become distracted, then turn your mind toward the effortful meditation of compassion. And generate compassion in relation to the topic that you've been contemplating. So for instance, if you're contemplating ignorance, then at this point you generate compassion for all of the beings who are experiencing suffering from that particular state, you know? Like just figure out where's the place where I can find compassion about this object. You can feel compassion for all of those who are, fall under the spell of samsara. You can feel compassion for all of those who wish to practice the Dharma but don't have the opportunity to. You can go in any direction with this. There's a lot to work with these contemplations. But since you've contemplated it, you let your mind relax, and then you turn your mind towards compassion. And you contemplate compassion, you generate compassion until it feels very genuine and powerful. And then you let your mind rest again. And then when you begin to lose your meditation to thought, then you come back to the effortful part. You consider a commitment that you feel ready to make related to that contemplation. And then you let the mind rest again. And then your mind gets active again. And so you formulate a prayer in relation to that contemplation. And then you continue with the contemplation of the next foundational thought, and you go through this cycle again, and then the next thought and the next thought. Following this process brings you closer to the direct experience of mind's nature, of the absolute truth, which can't be grasped by words or concepts. Chagdud Tulku says that meditating in this way prevents our practice from becoming stagnant. We keep it fresh at every step. The key to meditation lies in cutting. After contemplating, we cut our attachment to concepts by relaxing. Then we cut our attachment to relaxation in order to pray. We pray, then we cut. We develop compassion and cut. We reestablish our commitment and cut to the next contemplation. This way, the mind won't fall into ordinary samsaric thinking and will stay alert and concentrated in the quick of the experience. Meditation becomes fresher as it moves, like stream water as it tumbles, beating against one rock and then another, so that by the bottom of the cascade, it's very pure. Awareness of mind's true nature and the thought process are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they're inseparable. For example, if you're going to meditate on the sun, can you block out the sun's rays? No. Can you think only of the sun without thinking of the sun's rays? No. The rays are the qualities of the sun. They're part of the sun. So what's wrong with the rays of the sun? Similarly, your mind, your discursive thoughts and concepts, are the display of the pure awareness primordial nature. So if we get good at this, we'll be able to maintain awareness while we're eating, while we're driving, while we're playing with the kids, while we're going to the movies, anything. Chagdud Tulku says, the real skill in meditation lies in not losing awareness in the moment of transition from one thought or activity to another. By being fully present with each experience and each transition, you remain close to their essence. It's like riding a wave. You stay right in the center of the movement with the force of the wave as it rises and falls. If you get ahead of it or behind it, if you get separated from it, you fall. You lose it. In this way, you can learn how to ride the wave of the thought process while not losing awareness. So this is good news because we're thinking all the time. So if we can maintain awareness while we're thinking, that somehow makes it seem a little more possible, I think. More so than stopping thoughts altogether. So let's try doing this contemplation together. Since we're meditating all together, I am going to use a timer that I've set at preset intervals. Our minds probably all don't move at the same pace through these if we were to naturally do this. So just for the sake of being on the same page, we're going to use the timer. But if you were doing this on your own, then it's best to do it by maintaining awareness of your mind and noticing when it's time to move on to the next thing. Noticing when your state of relaxation has become stagnant or has become, when your mind starts to get active again, then move on to the next thing. And then when your conceptual thoughts become, you get stuck in the conceptualization and that feels stagnant, doesn't feel fresh, then drop it and go to the next thing. So if you continue to practice this on your own, you'll notice when it's not feeling fresh anymore. But today we're going to use a timer. So, let's see. So this will take us about 15 minutes. We'll begin by examining the qualities of our precious human rebirth. Think about your own life, or the lives of those you know, and then the lives of those who you have read or heard about, celebrities, presidents, whoever. Do you have all of the freedoms and advantages when you look at your own life? Do all of the people that you know have these freedoms and advantages? Do the people that you've read about have freedoms and advantages? What about the people in other countries? What about the Kurdish people right now? How many freedoms and advantages do they have while they're besieged by war? What about people who are in a state of starvation? Do they have the freedoms and advantages? What about someone who's living right down the road from this temple but doesn't know that it exists? Or who has the freedoms and advantages and who doesn't? And we can think about whether or not the way that we are living our lives now will lead to a precious human rebirth in the future. What are the causes of that precious human rebirth, and are we creating those causes? What about the people that we love? What are the causes that they're creating? Will they have a precious human rebirth in the future? If you don't believe in reincarnation, you can examine whether you and others are living in a way so as not to have regrets at the time of death. You can ask yourself, are you fulfilling your life's purpose? So we'll contemplate this for a few minutes, and then we'll go through a process of relaxing, generating compassion, relaxing, making a commitment, relaxing, formulating a prayer, and then relaxing. And I'll give you cues as we go, so don't worry. You don't have to memorize it. All right, so let's examine the qualities of our precious human rebirth. Now let your mind rest. Now turn your mind to generating compassion related to that contemplation. And let the mind rest. Now consider a commitment that you feel ready to make in relation to that contemplation. the mind rest again. Now formulate a prayer related to the contemplation. And let the mind rest. It's not so hard, right? So I hope you'll try this practice at home. It's pretty simple. You can go at your own pace. Once you go through one round of that, you can start over with the next contemplation, or, if you only have time to take 10 minutes and think about one of them, that's good. If you have time, keep going through the whole cycle of them. Contemplation of the four thoughts is so important because it prevents fair weather practice, and it turns our mind toward truth. It's also good to contemplate the teachings in light of our own experience, hundreds of times throughout the day. No matter what we're doing, walking, talking, eating, we can contemplate the four thoughts in relation to anything that we are doing. So this might sound like adding a giant to-do to your to-do list, but it's really not. You might think, I'm too busy, I've got enough stuff going on, now I have to be remembering to think about this all the time too. But we're already engaged in nonstop contemplation, focusing on self-centered thoughts that increase our suffering, and instead we can reflect again and again on how we can best be of service to others, or how we unwittingly perpetuate the causes of suffering for ourselves and others. Or we can imagine challenging situations and practice responding to them. How can our knowledge of karma or our knowledge of suffering alter our response? So we can work it into our daily lives in that way. And by remembering the four thoughts constantly throughout our lives, we will turn our minds toward truth. And always at the end of your contemplation, remember to dedicate the merit for the benefit of all beings. And that's what we'll do now. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free from suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms. So thank you, everyone.